today, what we're going to talk about is just sort of a, I mean, I'm sort of looking at this as maybe a workshop or a garage. Let's tear apart some of the things going on. We can talk about controversies that other people are dealing with as community managers, and or some of the stuff that's on your plate, and or the kinds of challenges that you're going to face that you don't really know about yet, you know, that you're worried about facing or whatever.
I am a social media strategist with the Social Media Center of Excellence. We are a mighty team of 2 of us and a boss. And we look at issues facing the company, sort of company-wide, as opposed to whether or not we're in marketing or customer support, or we sort of look at it in a wide way. And we're responsible for Intel's social media guidelines, which we post to publicly. We're looking at putting together kind of a listening response model company-wide, and how would we roll it out. We do social media training, best practices.
What type of tools or site functions have you utilized other than forums and blogs within communities to keep members engaged? Which is a really great question, because I mean, even with something as simple as name, you can throw up video and all that kind of stuff, but if no one's playing with the toys, then who cares? And with a lot of the tool sets that are out there right now, you know, they're kind of one size fits many. So what are you doing outside of blogs and forums to keep people engaged?
So I like to talk a lot about the Intel Software Network, because they were our first community site, and I think that they break the mold. They are kind of our leaders in that space. No offense, Josh. The other Josh Bancroft is on that team. But they are taking community to the next level at Intel. They have something called the Black Belt program now, where both Intel members and the community members at large can become either brown belts or black belts, depending on the level of engagement you have in the community. So I think we have about 2,500 brown belts and about a dozen black belts, half of which are from the community at large and half of which come from Intel. So, you know, things like that to kind of take it to the next level. I know one of the things that Josh talks about will probably come up in the next discussion on the next panel, but you know, community members, when they first started the community, they knew it would be about 90% Intel and about 10% community, and they hoped over time to kind of reverse that trend. And what are we at now?
65% community driven.
65% of the content is driven by external members of the community, not Intel employees.
Anybody else want to, you know, is your number anything like that number? So that makes sense, I guess, you know.
Yeah, in my specific community, so I'm, again, high performance computing, we started out as a support mailing list where the engineers answered all the questions. Today, we can't answer the questions because the community gets there first.
Wow.
That's
the best.
awesome.
You know, it's like throwing the party where you don't have to speak. I'm a big fan of that. To answer the, you know, the tools type question, I mean, there's even more lightweight tools, like IdeaStorm for Dell. If you look at healthcare.ideastorm.com that just launched, Dell decided that they were going to split theirs into verticals, and they started with healthcare, because they turned out that the people who wanted XYZ in their latitude isn't exactly the same person who wants the ABC in their healthcare platform. So they've got, you know, they've started building sort of these dig-like communities that vote up and down features. If you haven't seen regular old IdeaStorm, it's basically questions like, how come we can't all have the same power charger for our laptop? So when I'm at a conference and I forget mine, I can't just grab another dude's Dell laptop power charger. And they were like, oh yeah, that's a good one. You know, and the engineers were like, well, you can't, because there's a micrometer of something, you know, and an ohm, you know, whatever, it's close enough. But then there's also ones like, why can't we make our laptop big? And, you know, those get voted down sometimes, and then breast cancer awareness, and it goes voted up again. So, feel free to ask questions. If you ask them to C20YOU there on the right, then I'll see them, as you saw that I read off the screen, because I can read, it turns out.
Well, if you guys want to know, my Twitter handle is Kelly R. Feller.
Kelly R. Feller. Yes, see, we have Kelly R. Feller and Chris Brogan.
I
Thanks,
posted
Tom.
one question that got pushed down by the
Oh, you
other
moved it.
groups.
Which one, on the left, the C20?
Mm-hmm. No, it's C20U.
What?
Just scroll down, it's C20U.
Oh, how do you scroll this? The whole page goes?
I think that little arrow at the right.
Shush. What's the most fun one that you've been involved in? Gee
Well,
whiz, kids, let's talk about chips.
Well, so last week we launched something called Sponsors of Tomorrow. I don't know if any of you have seen it. We have a new video that equates the co-inventor of the USB, Ajay, with a rock star. And it's really sort of elevating geeks to rock star status. And I think what's been most fun and exciting about this is that it's the first marketing campaign that I've participated in where we really thought social from the get-go. And we looked at, okay, how do we determine whether the conversations online, if we're really having an impact on the way people feel and think about Intel. So we had to determine, okay, well, what sort of emotional characteristics are we trying to elicit, and what linkages are we trying to make between our company and how people feel about it? What keywords are those, and then use those to kind of track the conversation as things were evolving and as they were released. That's the first time in history that I know. And we had really fascinating sort of learnings out of that. For example, if we're twittering about something like that and we drive people to a site and we use a bit.ly, should we drive them directly to the site, or should we drive them to the dig page so that we get kind of a 2-for-1, right? So you go to the dig page, you're gonna go further probably to check out the content, and then while you're there, you'll probably dig it at the same time. But if you just sent it over to the content, people may or may not dig it. So those kind of questions that came up that you just had to live through until you, to determine, you know, what to do.
That's interesting. So do it a twofer. So you get the bit.ly over to the dig that gets them over to the community. So number one, you can see your stat on who actually bothered to follow you through Twitter into dig. I'd be worried that you'd have, you know, fall off at dig. You know, 'cause you might be lazy like me. I just vote and leave.
Yeah, so we wanted to sort of test it out to see what would come out. I don't know that we have any sort of initial results because it just happened last week, but
The measurements question.
yes.
Any other crazy questions before I dig into the measurements question? Come on, kids, raise hands. Scream, doesn't matter. Make bad jokes. So, an octopus and a nun and a farmer walk into a bar. And the bartender says, "What is this, a joke?" What are you being measured on? How do you do your community successful? Who cares?
Well, I mean, Josh can probably talk about more of what the community is measured on because that's the pain point that he struggles with. But one of the things that we're measured on is how many people at Intel have we enabled to become active in social media. So we have an internal social media community of social media practitioners. And we have a training that everyone who wants to engage in social media must take in order to do it, and it has some legal information in it and things like some SEC guidelines, and it's just an online training. And then we have the guidelines that we've posted, but that's really kind of an important step because a lot of people at Intel are very fearful about getting involved. I mean, it's no secret that Intel's been rather closed-door company for a long time.
What?
Yeah. News to everyone, I'm sure. And so, you know, people were reluctant to engage. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I, you know, get in trouble? And we really wanted to create both of the training and the guidelines to help people feel empowered that, you know, we've got your back. It's okay to do this. You know, if you do something wrong, here's the best way to handle that. You know, be transparent, do a mea culpa publicly, you know, that kind of stuff. So we're kind of measured in how many people are able to go out and get online on Intel's behalf. What about you, Josh? Do you want to talk about any metrics that your specific community looks at?
Wow, it's a long dialogue.
It is.
Yeah, no, not
Not forget it, don't answer.
I do think that ROI of social media is the